following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Welcome to Gab with God. Gab about God is what we're covering today. I am Reverend Dr. Lori Wiley, the pastor of Litchfield Community Church, and with me today is Jacob McQueston, and we're going to have a dialogue about purpose. What is our purpose in life? What's the purpose of our world? Why are we here? Is there any meaning to what we're doing? So let's begin by asking Jacob, what do you think is the purpose of our world?
What is the purpose of our world? Well, I'd like to say that I think the world itself came fairly randomly. Just out of a mathematical standpoint, the universe we understand is ever expanding. Very large. I mean, we can't understand how big it really is. And out of all those multiple of millions, billions of chemical reactions, our planet came here. And from that, our human beings came from the same idea, just on this single planet. And that's what I think the Earth's purpose and our beginning purpose was.
Okay. So you're saying that we're here randomly, there was no design, but it's just a coincidence that things worked together and got us here. So I would counter that from Scripture by saying that the Bible is very clear that God had a plan and a purpose for our world. In fact, it specifies it in Isaiah. I'm just going to read to you here. It says, I am God, there is no other. I am God, there's none like me. I make known the end from the beginning, from ancient times and what is still to come. I say, my purpose will stand, and I will do all as I wish. What I have said, that I will bring about. What I have planned, that I will do. So, I would say from the, looking at it from the visual point of view, it's very interesting that everything in our world has a pattern. If you look at math, you have your formulas. You know, we can do 5, 10, 15. We have patterns there. Science has a pattern. Language has a pattern. That's how we can get words. They're patterns of letters, and patterns of words make sentences. So I would say that God was giving a hint right from the get-go. In fact, time is a pattern. We have 7 days in a week. We have 24 hours in a day. All of that is a pattern. And God was showing through the created world and the patterns that he was in charge, he was organizing, he was ordering, and he was planning things in such a way that they are not random and they are not just circumstantial, but from the beginning, before the world was created, God had a plan and a purpose.
My thing about the math and the science is that these laws clearly did exist, but they were discovered by man so that we could effectively communicate with others, to
Okay.
pass information down through the years. And I find it somewhat obvious that there must be a pattern, because if there was not, things would not happen the same way.
Right.
You know, you can't have hydrogen mixed with oxygen differently every time, otherwise you'll never have water. So
That's random.
well, that's random. We came here randomly. Well, out of the billions and millions of universes and planets, you know, I find it interesting that we think we're the only ones, right?
No,
And
I don't think we're the only ones.
well, we're getting into aliens now, but I
Well,
think
we know
that
there's angels and heavenly beings.
of course. Okay, well, that's
so
true. Okay,
there can be all kinds of beings out there.
that's true.
Yeah.
But I think that our purpose in the world was not divine necessarily. On a humanoid-based
Okay.
thought process,
Let's talk about that.
I think that it could possibly be. I don't necessarily believe that, but the idea is I'm willing to entertain that thought.
Okay.
And
So why do you think, if we leave God out of it, which I will do for a minute, why do you think humans are on this planet? What is our purpose?
well, I think our purpose, it's hard to leave God out of this one for me,
Yeah.
actually, is I believe that if God did put us here, it was for appreciation. Kind of like an artist, I think we might have been put here to appreciate what has been done.
Okay,
And
that's good.
and our interest in science, and because science is to me a man-made thing. I mean, it was science itself, and the way we communicate with each other was designed by us. Did God sit down and go, I'm going to call this science? Maybe he did. I don't know. I wasn't there. But science is a man-made thing, the study of how things happen.
Okay.
Same with math. You know, I don't think God necessarily had to name anything, if he did, right? But we use that to teach each other, to understand what's around us. And
But it didn't originate with us.
science.
Are you saying the laws of nature originated with us?
No. But science, our drive and our continued study of what's around us, I don't find it anywhere in the Bible to say this is how the flower grows, right?
Right.
Because so when I see God, he appreciates our understanding of the world, but that was not his original intent.
Okay. So let's talk about what your purpose in life would be if you believe there is no God and that God didn't put you here on this earth. Would you have a purpose?
Would you have a purpose without God? Yes, you would.
Okay, what would it be?
To take care of your family, to take care of
Okay.
yourself. And although we are only here for a short period of time, and I'm saying 100 years, possibly max, is a very small period of time considering
Yes.
how old the world is, but to simply take care of yours.
Okay.
And I don't mean yours as in, you know, I'm taking care of my car, my driveway. No, take care of your species, your humans. You know, and I find the man's role would be take care of your family and your kids, obviously the wife's too, but you know, take care of your wife, and the wife take care of your husband.
Yeah.
I feel like that was the purpose, because there is no continued afterlife or continued life forever, right? So your
so
purpose.
Jacob, how did you come up with that being the purpose? Is it the purpose to care for others, which is a wonderful purpose? Where did that come from if it didn't come from God?
Well, it's simply you can see that if you do not take care of things, they don't last.
Okay.
Now, I love my family. Do I always do everything for them? No, of course not. But if I do not help take care of them, they cannot help take care of me. And it's a very immediate understanding. You can try it with your car. Don't put oil in it.
Yeah.
See how long it lasts.
Yeah.
Now, that's a human-made, human-designed idea, but the same thing applies. If you don't
Right.
take care of things, they do not last. And
Right.
so I would believe that is our purpose. And
Okay. All right. So, and of course, I would agree with you on that we do need to take care of our environment. In fact, the very first humans recorded in the Bible, Adam and Eve, were given specific directions to take care of the world and to take care of the animals. And so you could say God expected us to be environmentalists from the beginning. That's our role, to do the very things that you've said. The difference would be that I would say those orders, if you want to call it orders, were given by God, and we have an obligation before God to do them, whereas you would say it's just cause and effect. And if it doesn't work, then you do something else, and there's no oversight from a divine being. Is that fair to say?
yeah, that's pretty much what it is.
Okay. So as far as what the Bible says about what is our purpose in being here, well, if you say the catechism, it's what is the purpose of humans on this earth? To love and praise God and to serve Him. So we feel that we have a divine purpose that comes from God. But if you look in the Bible, and this is what astonished me when I was preparing for the service on Sunday, in Corinthians, it says the whole purpose of being on this earth is that it's a warm-up for eternity. That this is just the practice field for forever and ever. And everything that happens to us on this earth is just preparing us for eternity. So what is our real purpose? It's to praise and love and serve God forever in heaven. And that would explain some of the pain and suffering that we all go through. And we look at senseless tragedies, well, we call them senseless with reason, you know, early deaths and shootings and people getting sicknesses and all that. And we say, why is this happening? Well, the answer in 2 Corinthians 5 is because this is the preparation. And when God feels we're ready, He moves us on to the real game.
Well, so I find that interesting, and a lot of that makes sense to me. But the part I do not understand about this being practiced for forever, for an eternity, is with these shootings, with these tragedy, we already talked about evil, but are we being prepared for more tragedy and more heartbreak, more death? You know, why are we practicing dealing with those here if they hopefully don't exist in the eternity?
Right.
And anyone can feel how they want. I know I certainly wouldn't want to live in death and destruction and murder for an eternity.
Right.
I think the good definitely weighs out the bad for the short time I'll be here, but to have to deal with losing loved ones and seeing horrible things happen for an eternity really get you down.
Right. Well, the Bible's pretty clear that there's no sadness, there's no sickness, there's no sin in heaven. So heaven is this perfect place that Jesus came to this earth to prepare us to go there. And just before He left, He said, I'm going up to get a place ready for you so that you can be with me forever, because Jesus had such love for His disciples. And we do. We just, you know, when you think about your family, when I think about my husband, I don't want to think about ever being separated from him. So the idea of being united because we love each other so much, is the reason that Jesus came, to get us ready so we could go there. And we say, well, I want a perfect life on this earth. And I don't want any sickness or sadness or all of that. But I was asking you about training for football, because you played football, right?
Yes, I did in high school.
Yeah, and what did you have to do during training in order to win the game?
Well, besides the actual training of getting your butt whooped by the coach, running and lifting weights and all those things, you had to give up more of mentally than you might expect. Time with friends, time with a girlfriend, time with family, time doing just whatever else you want to do. So you had to actually give up quite a bit to dedicate to winning the game.
So why did you do it?
I was proud. I was proud when we won.
Yeah.
I was proud being part of a team. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Something I don't think you get in a lot of other places. But
Right. So that's the parallel.
okay.
What you're going to get in the end makes it all worth it. All the pain and suffering that we go through here, if we have a purpose, is to get to that place where we win the game.
Well, and so I'm not saying that there shouldn't be pain and suffering. There has to be, and the reason for that is the value of the comparative. There cannot be good without evil. There can't be happy without sad. If nothing bad ever happens to anybody, they won't appreciate that. I don't really know anybody who's come from a family of millions of dollars, but I know that they can drop money on things that I would never be able to afford to spend.
Yeah, but they're the least happy too. Don't ever forget that.
And that's what I've noticed, but it's the appreciation for what you have. And so I feel like I truly appreciate, especially now. There was a point in time where I didn't necessarily always appreciate, oh yeah, great, I get to get up today and go to work, woohoo, yay. I appreciate it much more now, and I feel like it's because I think that once my time is up, that's it. Here's your time frame. You better make it count. Now, if I'm going to have eternity to do what I want and be happy, what makes now special? Obviously, you have to work and everything like that, but you're not going to like it.
Well, it's all preparation. It's just like training for football. It's preparation. You look at it that way. This is not the end game, life on this earth. This is just preparation for eternity. So what is our purpose? Our purpose, according to 2 Corinthians 5, is to be prepared to go to that place in heaven. And this is just a temporary thing. There was something you had mentioned that I wanted to bring up. Beyond the, the suffering and depression, talking about addictions.
That's true.
So one hypothesis could be that the reasons for addictions is because people can't find their purpose. And that feeling that everything is meaningless and there's no purpose. Now, we know that the number one reason that people indulge in addictive kinds of things, the number one reason is so that they can feel good, okay? And I get that. But isn't that possible that they don't feel good because they have no purpose? And they don't know why they're here on this earth? They can't figure out what their purpose is? And that can cause a lot of emotional and mental and especially spiritual pain.
And you're totally right. To not feel like there is a purpose could be terrible, but I feel like it could also be worse, much, much worse, if you think that your purpose was to suffer.
I would never say it's to suffer.
I would. Well, and when you look at some people who are in these situations, tragic things have happened. They lose a loved one not from death, but from their choice, which is very heartbreaking.
You mean suicide?
No, just leaving, divorce.
Oh, okay.
Right?
I thought you meant death.
Death. Well, death is an ultimate well, I believe you're not going to see them until you yourself die, either way, religious or not, possibly. So there's almost a comfort in knowing that you won't see them until death, right? Because there's no hope to see them. With hope, you sit there and you'll dwell and you think, well, maybe you'll see them. Maybe it'll happen, but you can't. When you think that your purpose was to suffer, you blame God.
Yeah, I don't think God's purpose is ever to suffer.
No, I don't think so either. But I think that definitely when it comes to addiction, it could be possible people believe that they were put here to suffer. You know, we know personally what some people can go through.
Right.
And we do a weekend to try to make sure they understand that life will get better, right? Life can be better than what you know or knew. But when some people are put into these situations, I think addiction leads to that. And so they find any way to ease what they might believe is the hate of God, to put them in that situation.
Yeah. But God is always loving. God is always loving, and he never says, I'm just going to make somebody suffer. He allows suffering, and he will use suffering. If we will turn to him, he will use suffering to make us better people. Just as, what's that, what's the animal, the oyster?
Okay.
You know, it has to go through suffering in order to be a beautiful pearl. So God allows suffering and will use it for our good. We'll always use it for good. But God never says, I'm going to make this person suffer just for the sake of giving them a hard time.
Yeah.
God always does things out of love. And people get mixed up about that, and they don't get it.
Well, and I think it's very hard. It's very hard to understand that maybe this is really the best thing.
No, that God will make it the best thing.
I hope that if he puts me through some very terrible tragedy, that he already knows that it's going to be the best thing or best for me, not just turn it into it halfway through. But my thought is that I'd like to go to Noah's Ark here for a moment. You know,
okay.
Why did Noah have to build that ark?
Yeah.
I don't know if flooding and killing the world was necessarily the act of love.
That's a good question. So this is how I would answer that. When people are really caught in the kind of sins that they were caught in, and they were terrible sins, okay? We know that they were doing violent and terrible things to animals and to each other. And the Bible tells us that they were violent. And we think, well, our world is violent, America's violent. But in comparison, this was a very, very violent world. And they were better off having their lives cut off at that point and moving on to another place. The Bible tells us that Jesus went to Hades, and preached the gospel to them, and they got another chance. Because this was way before Jesus. This was way before. So, I mean, some of this is speculative, but you look at, let's take our friends who are dying from addictions. Well, maybe God's saying, this is enough for you for this world. I have something better to work out for you. But of course, we should always choose life.
Yeah.
And we should always choose doing the right thing, which is being kind to people and animals and taking care of our environment. I mean, the Bible's very clear on what the right thing is. But when people get way beyond that, then maybe it is a mercy that God has moved them on to another place. Who are we to judge God?
Well, not me.
Yeah.
I just like to question.
We get this tiny picture. We each get this tiny picture. And God is the only one that gets the big picture. And yet it doesn't make any sense to us. Things have happened that make no sense. Do you agree with that?
No, I understand everything all the time.
Good for you. Well, can I ask you some questions?
You're right. We'll have to talk about that. No, of course I don't understand everything. I
Right,
mean,
but God does.
and
And it all makes sense to God.
yeah. Well, and that's why I truly I love these conversations, is because I think we both get a little closer to truth.
Yeah.
Because I believe that there is ultimately one truth. Opinions are subjective, but there is one truth. Will we know it? Probably not until we die. But to try to find that and live towards being true, I think should be all of our purpose in understanding. Because if you understand how, why, when, all these things, it will lead you to be a believer or to not. And I think ultimately, in my opinion, because I believe that I'll be here for this period of time, whatever that will be,
Yeah.
is if you understand, you'll make the most of anything that's here. And on a religious side of that, you'll take the time we have to practice the best you can, with what you have. So I think that's part of our purpose as well.
Good. So I'm going to challenge you on the there's only one truth at our next time. But I think
Okay.
we've come to the
Okay.
we've come to the end of this, and I wanted to just read you this last verse in Romans 8:28. We know that in all things God works for the good of those who love God. So God works for. It doesn't mean that God's going to make us go through hard things, but if we have to, He will work for our good. To those who love God, who have been called according to God's purpose. So God has a purpose for each person as well as our world. It was nice to talk about the whole world. I like doing that.
Yeah.
But the truth is, God has a purpose for every single person. And God has a plan. And it's kind of mind-boggling that God planned for you and me and you before the world began.
Well, that's a whole conversation in and of itself.
That's what the Bible says, okay? So
That's a whole basket of eggs right there.
but think if it were true. Okay, if you're not ready to believe it. Think if it were true. Use your imagination.
Yeah, well, honestly, I'd be kind of scared.
Scared?
Yeah, well, and just to real quick is, if there was a plan,
Yeah.
and such a defined plan, where's my free choice?
Right. It doesn't address the free choice
So,
in here,
and
but
that's
it
why
does address purpose.
And that's why I said that's an entire conversation.
Oh,
but
okay.
I do see that there could be a plan of purpose. Where do this group will ask the questions to reinforce the others, and I am the questioner, and hopefully at the end of these, you come out on the right side of, or what you believe is the right side of things. So that's why, and this has been a journey for me as well. I mean, I'm not rock solid right here, so I mean, if I'm totally open to anything that's being said. And
Good.
Right now, I believe the purpose of the show is to get you at home and us here to a better place of understanding. Not that I think we ever really will. Like I said it before, anyone who believes that they know why or how is either a fool or a liar.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's okay.
And I enjoy it too because we all think differently, and it's just refreshing to have you come from a different point of view than my own. And, I talk with my husband. He has a different point of view, too. That's why I would challenge the one truth, because you may see things one way. I mean, look at this room. You see it one way. I see this room another way. And Tony sees this room another way. So when I say when you say one truth, we want to be careful that we're not saying everybody has to believe exactly the same way.
Well, no, my whole idea with the one truth is something I've been thinking of for a while, and there is ultimately one thing that is true.
Okay.
Okay. Now we can see things how we want.
Right.
And my purpose, my most recent purpose in life, is to try to figure out or get myself to a point to accept that I'm either not going to understand what the truth is, or try to find a pathway to get to that point.
And you will. You
And
will.
at one point. But I believe that there ultimately is an objective truth. Here it is.
And I do too. I do
And
believe
exactly.
that. Yeah.
And so we can believe differently. We can try to get there differently.
We can see things
We
differently.
can see things differently, but it doesn't matter how we feel. I believe that there is a truth.
Right.
You know, there is a right, there is a wrong.
And the fact is, there is a room here.
Exactly. And
You
the
know,
fact is, there is a room.
You can see it one way, I see it another, but we both agree this is a room.
Yes, exactly.
So there is truth that is outside of us, and we can all see it differently, but one truth. That's great. Well, thank you so much, Jacob.
Yes, thank you.
And I think that we are just about to end here talking about what is your purpose in life? Have you thought about that? What is the purpose of our world? God has given us a purpose, and we want to make sure that we figure it out, and it takes some figuring to do that.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.